कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदनंदन व्रज जनरंजन तीरावनचारी तीरावनचारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे हरे जय राधा गिरिधारी राधा गिरिधारी राधा जय जगन्नाथ जय देव जय सुभद्रा जय गौनिताय जय गौनिताय जय गौनिताय जय गौर प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद जय गुरुदेव 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 जय गुरुदेव जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस श्री अष्टोत्तर श्री ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामचा शिलादास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga all glories to Srila Prabhupada all glories to Srila Gurudev Hare Krishna everybody and welcome to another session of this evening Krishna Katha where we look at different pastimes and lessons from Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam ki jai. So we finished three different pastimes of the Lord. I'm not sure if you have seen all of them or have managed to catch them after it had gone live. It's all on Facebook and also on YouTube. For those of you who missed the live session, you can always catch them up later on at your convenience. So we had started off with a wonderful Leela from Srimad Bhagavatam uh, of Vritrasur. That was our first one. Then we followed that up with Gajendra, and then we had the Ajamil Leela. So today we'll start another special pastime, which is from Canto 5 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we often find that normally when we give somebody says, "What's your name?" It is traditionally the Vedic tradition that we don't just pop our own name first and that's it. So in the Vedic tradition, the Vedic way, when somebody asks a person a name, it is usually at least three names form a person's name, like three different parts. So the first part is that person's name. The middle part is the person's the person's father's name, and the last part is what we known as we call the surname, is the family title. So this is the traditional way in which somebody gives his introduction, of course, from a material viewpoint. So why is that important? Because we are not, we are not on our own. We just don't spring up from nowhere. Our existence is based on the birth we are given by our biological mother and father. And as an acknowledgement and gratitude, and always remembering that we were raised up by our worthy parents, the father's name is always repeated after one's personal name. And then the family name. So it gives, when a name is said, it gives a complete perception of who you are, who your father is, and what is your lineage. Why is lineage so important? It carries responsibilities. And we'll touch upon this point in this particular Leela. But the reason I brought this up is it is very important sometimes for us to understand what's behind the name. Nowadays, this is a big fashion of parents just giving any name that they find, very, very rhythmic or very dramatic, or something that is pleasing to the ears. But as we saw in the Ajami Leela as well, naming a child is very important. And the name should be given in a way that benefits the child. More so, a spiritual benefit. So there is a name that is given to a particular subcontinent. In fact, the whole planet at one point was called Bharatvarsh, or is called Bharatvarsh. But prior to that, it was called something else. Not sure if you're aware, but it was called Ajanabha Varsh before. And then it changed its name, or the whole place changed its name to Bharatvarsh. So who is this Bharat? Why did a name get changed to another name, and it is continuing even today? So whosoever's name was given to this Varsha, this tract of land, must have been quite glorious, must have had some excellent qualities, must have been a great personality that we can draw inspiration from, that we can draw some lessons from to implement in our own life. Isn't it interesting that we should know about the person upon whom this whole tract of land got its name, Bharatvarsh? So we'll look at the pastimes of Bharat Maharaj in this session. And obviously, we'll not be able to finish the entire pastime in this session, so we'll continue it in a serial order, serial form. So we'll be talking about that. And when we talk about Bharat Maharaj's Leela, there are many aspects of this pastime. But most important that catches our attention is the fact that this Leela, at least the first part of the Leela, focuses on something very important. and interesting. And it talks about the attachment we develop, knowingly or unknowingly. So the attachment we develop should ultimately benefit us, should ultimately help us reach our ultimate destination. But when that attachment, instead of leading us to the ultimate destination, pulls us down and causes our downfall, it is fatal. So, in this particular first part of the Leela, we will be talking about the fatal attachment and meditate on that particular aspect of this Leela. So, before we take up the verse and start the pastime, we'll do the invocation prayers. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। So this is from 5th Canto, chapter 8. So before we talk about Bharat Maharaj, we need to understand what is his lineage, who was his father. And that will give a glimpse of the lessons that he got from his childhood, what he imbibed in his personality, and how he became so glorious that this whole continent was named upon from his name. So we understand from Bhagavatam in the previous chapters that there was a great king called Maharaj Nabhi, and he had a wonderful wife, Meru Devi, and from this couple they had a few sons, and they had 100 sons. Sorry, they had one son, that was Rishabdev. So Nabhi and Meru Devi, they meditated on the Lord, and they wanted the Lord to appear, or they wanted the Lord as their son, or somebody as good as the Lord as their son. So the Supreme Lord said that, well, there's nobody who's like me, so looks like I'll have to come as your son. So the Lord appeared from the womb of Meru Devi as Rishabdev. And in the course of, he was obviously was a great king. He ruled very nicely, and he got married to Jayanti, and he had 100 sons, Rishabdev. So the first 10 sons, the elder sons, they were all Kshatriyas, and the eldest amongst them was called Bharat. His name was Bharat. Then the last 9 sons, they were Mahabhagavats, the preachers of Srimad Bhagavatam, and their details are described more in the 11th canto as the Navayogendras. So they were also the sons of Rishabdev, and the rest of them, they were Brahmanas. So 10 Kshatriyas, of which one was Bharat Maharaj, and the rest of them, they were all qualified Brahmanas who followed the Karma Kanda system and lived a completely Vedic civilized way of life. Of all the sons, obviously Bharat was the eldest, and there is a nice description in the previous chapter which talks about Rishabdev, and perhaps we'll do that Leela in more detail in one of the later sessions. So he gave some wonderful instructions to his sons. And the primary instruction to all his sons was that since Bharat is extremely qualified, very, very skilled, and the future king, you should all cooperate with each other by being under the advice and guidance and instructions of Bharat Maharaj. So from the very beginning, he established that system, that culture, that all the brothers cooperatively act and follow the instructions of Bharat Maharaj under his guidance. So Bharat Maharaj, he was trained to be a qualified king, and eventually he ruled extensively. All his citizens were extremely happy, and uh, a, he married a personality called Panchajani, and from her he had five very capable and wonderful sons. So when he started ruling, he followed the instructions of his father that he had received previously, and based on these instructions, he performed his duties as a king, looking after all his citizens and caring for all living entities within his kingdom. And it was so wonderful, his rule was so wonderful that the whole Mother Earth was wonderful, was producing her, was giving her best, producing the best things. People were happy. There was no problems that they faced generally, and they were extremely. It was a loving relationship between the citizens and the king, something that we cannot even imagine in today's world. So he followed his father's instructions, and a part of father's instruction was to engage in or to intensify his devotional service by doing his duty and also worshipping the Supreme Lord. So, by following the instructions, his heart was purified and he enjoyed material opulence. Bhagavatam says he enjoyed material opulence for how long? 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 100 years? Take a guess. He enjoyed material opulence for 10 million years. Now I know it sounds, I mean, oof. How can somebody even stay alive that long? This is the amount of time that Bharat Maharaj was destined to enjoy, not his lifespan. Bhagavatam says, Varsha Ayuta Sahasra, means 1,000 times 10,000. That many years was destined for Bharat Maharaj to enjoy his opulence. So he was ruling very well. He was not attached to the opulence. He was not attached to just doing his duty. His only attachment was to his father's instructions and doing his duty to the best of his ability. And that's why he was loved by all. And because he was extremely powerful, extremely qualified, the tract of land, the place was referred to as Ajanabha Varsha. But because he was an extremely wonderful ruler, that place was renamed as Bharatvarsha. So that's how the whole place that we know as Bharatvarsha gets its name from. It's a wonderful, illustrious personality. So when his period of 10 million years was about to end, he knew that it's about to end. So rather than holding on to the last day, that oh my, like how sometimes we get some wonderful facilities. So sometimes we go to maybe a motel, a hotel, or a resort, and we stay there for 2 days, 3 nights, or whatever it is. So if the checkout time is 10 a.m., how many of us would check out a bit early? Because we want to enjoy. I'm not criticizing here. I'm just saying, because we have time till 10 a.m. in the morning, you never hear anybody leave the room at 8 a.m. unless they have a train or a plane to catch. That's different. That's you're forced to get out at that time. But voluntarily, nobody goes out early. They'll exactly do, even if they have nothing to do, they'll just sit in the room, watch TV, eat something, do whatever, but just enjoy that opulence, enjoy all that facility that has been given. And exactly at maybe dot 10 o'clock or a minute before or after, leave the room, hand over the key. Similarly, in today's world, politicians, when they sit on the, or they get power, they don't want to relinquish the power. Even if they are not qualified, even if they are not skilled, even if they realize that I'm not doing a good job, maybe somebody else can do a better job. Maybe I should train somebody and hand over. Nobody does that. It is said that unless politicians, once they get power, they sit on the seat, unless they are thrown away or they are killed, unfortunately. But that is not the Vedic way. The Vedic way is you have a particular period allotted to you, and when that period comes to an before that period comes to an end, it is the duty of the king to train their whoever he is training to take over from him and then retire. Retire for not from just the material activities and do nothing, but it is to retire from the material, enjoying material opulence and immerse themselves towards achieving the ultimate destination in life and engage in devotional service. So that's exactly what he did. He gave up all his opulences, gave up his beautiful wife, and divided all his wealth amongst his sons. And then he retired from family life completely. So he basically gave up all attachment to family life, completely renounced everything, handed over nicely. He just didn't throw everything and run away. He handed over everything nicely and himself pulled out. Why? Not that he could go out and do nothing or just sit quietly and do nothing, but so that he can devote all his time now in worshipping the Lord, in meditating on the Lord, in intensifying his devotional service. So he went to Haridwar. Lo and behold, even Ajamil went to Haridwar. Remember in the last Leela? So there's some connections. And in the last Leela, we described or we discussed how Haridwar is very, very important and powerful, specifically for performing devotional service. Like many other dhams, it is a dham. So in Haridwar, he started performing his devotional service. And imagine, it is very difficult for a king who is ruling the entire planet. So when he was ruling the entire planet, he was also worshipping the Lord. How was he worshipping the Lord? With full paraphernalia, with wonderful golden objects, plates, spoons, a lot of so-called very fragrant flowers, very expensive articles that he could, as a king, afford to have with him and perform worship. But the same person, he gave everything up, his opulence. So he did not get all the plates with him. He just came on his own. It is said he's just wore a deer skin, maybe some barks and deer skin, matted hair, took bath 3 times a day, and never looked after himself. So his hair, once he took bath, he never combed or cleaned it up. So his hair was always wet pretty much throughout the day. It's very austere. So such a king who had access to so much paraphernalia, he was worshipping the Lord with what? With twigs, with leaves, with flowers and fruits that he could find in the forest. So it's a big change. As a king, he could have had access to that. And if he had said, he would have had 10 servants carrying all the paraphernalia with him into the forest. But that's not what is real devotional service. We should be able to perform devotional service in any condition of life. And the simpler it is, the better it is. So while he was performing a devotional service, he used to worship the Lord, meditate on him. As a result, even the little desire that he had for material enjoyment as a result of enjoying so many years, like millions of years, it started, that whole desire of enjoyment started reducing. He just completely gave up. And because he was constantly engaging in devotional service of the Lord, he started developing ecstatic symptoms. We read about these symptoms in the Nectar of Devotion. So he used to collect these paraphernalia that he found in the forest, and he chose to meditate on the banks of river Gandaki near the Himalayas, in a place called Pula Ashram, near Pula Muni's ashram. So Gandaki river is uh, extremely powerful and a very important river. And obviously, all of you know why. Gandaki river actually is the only place where you can find Shaligram Shila, or the incarnation of Narayan in this river. So the river gives kind of birth to the Shaligram Shila. So Gandaki river is actually the mother of Vishnu or Narayan. And it is said that you can't just go in the river and pick up a Shaligram Shila. It has to be, there are certain rules and regulations need to follow. But anyway, following the regulations, when somebody picks up a Shila, it is Narayan himself manifested. So unlike deities in the temple which have to be installed, the Shilas, they don't need installation. Just pick up the Shila, start worshipping straight away. And the worship also is extremely strict, and one should take take care that no offenses are committed, even unknowingly. So he used to live near the river Gandaki, extremely wonderful place to perform his devotional service. And it is said that he used to recite the hymns from the Vedas, specifically the Rig Veda. And this is how he carried out his daily activities, taking bath, worshipping the Lord, and meditating on him. That was his life. And he was completely blissful and developed ecstatic symptoms. And he was moving on, like he was making very swift progress in his devotional life, like how we know from Shraddha to Prem. So he was progressing. One day, after doing his morning duties, he was sitting on the river bank and he was meditating on the Lord. Suddenly he saw that a female deer just came along the river bank, and it appeared that it was very thirsty, and it was slowly drinking the water and feeling very satisfied. When this deer was drinking this water, suddenly there was this big roar. It was a roar of a lion. And as soon as the lion roared in the forest, this deer, so deer is always afraid that, I hope I'm not attacked. I hope, there's nobody who's following me or who can pounce on me. So while even drinking water, the deer was looking here and there and just ensuring that, it is safe. But when the lion roared, it became extremely fearful. And it was frightened and it was very agitated. It looked here and there, and obviously realizing there's a big danger, this deer, it just leaped across that river or the stream. And when it leaped across in the stream, what happened is this deer was pregnant. And when it leaped across the stream, in the leap and in the fear that she experienced, the baby in her womb dropped into the water. And this deer obviously went across, and because of extreme fatigue, fear, fright, it lost all its energy. Also, obviously, the fact that it had a miscarriage, lost all its energy, managed to go into a cave, and in that cave, this deer suddenly collapsed and gave up their body. Bharat Maharaj was seeing all this, and he saw that this baby deer was just born and floating in the water, and was obviously very, very, very distressed. It was motherless. So when Bharat Maharaj saw this, he felt extreme compassion. So any devotee who's sincerely practicing devotional service, whenever he sees any other entities, living entities in distress, first thing that happens is he feels compassion for that person. He feels the pain of the other living entity. And that's the hallmark of a devotee. Very soft-hearted. So he immediately thought that, oh, this deer is motherless, unprotected, so I should give it protection. I should take care of it. So he went towards the water, lifted the deer, and brought the deer back to his ashram. And then, to ensure that the baby is well protected, he started feeding the deer grass and used to ensure that he always protects the deer, the baby, from any attack of wild animals. It's a forest, anything can come from anywhere. And just like a mother looks after a baby and is constantly, as soon as the baby arrives, the mother's sole focus is only on the baby. So much so that the mother forgets her own sleep, the mother forgets her own food, the mother forgets her own comforts and completely focuses on the child. So much so that it develops an attachment and affection for the child. It is natural. So similarly, Bharat Maharaj, when he was looking after this baby deers, by constantly spending his time in her benefit, in her welfare, he started becoming very affectionate. He started developing an attachment to this deer. So as he was looking after, so obviously you can imagine a person whose only job or only duty was to meditate on the Lord, worship the Lord, suddenly now had a baby deer to look at, so to feed, and have to feed them on regular times, take care of the baby deer. So while he was doing these activities, what happened? It started impacting his devotional life. So he forgot the timings of his worship. Sometimes he even left his worship. He even started neglecting the regulations that is essential for spiritual advancement. It is very important to follow regulations. So, due to he just thought, I mean, he realized the fact that his worship has been affected, his devotional service, the intensity of his devotional service was affected. But then he started consoling himself and saying, see, I mean, it's destiny. And it happens, sometimes when we think we are doing a good act and it is impacting something else that we know we should be doing. Our mind sometimes gives us that, in Hindi is a dilasa. It just tells us that no, it's okay, that's fine. What you're doing is okay. It's not ideal, it's not very good, but that's okay. You should be doing it. So he was thinking that, see, due to destiny, this deer has taken shelter of me. So I am the father, the mother, relative, everything that the deer possibly needs to have is me, is completely dependent on me. If I don't do something for the deer will just die or just be completely shelterless. So I should not just think of my worship and my devotional service as it is also my duty to help a shelterless soul, a living entity, and take care. So even if it hampers my welfare, it's my duty to take care of a helpless living entity. Because I cannot just sacrifice my interest. I cannot sacrifice somebody else's upkeep, especially when that person is helpless, at the cost of my interest. So like that, he thought and he kept doing. As the more he did for the deer, the more he got attached. The more he got attached, the more he started doing. It's like a cyclic process. Attachment leads to more attachment. And as it happened, Bharat Maharaj now started spending most of the time with the deer. He ate with the deer, he slept with the deer, he bathed with the deer, he walked with the deer. Everything was with him. And by doing these activities, the ropes of affection started binding him even more, completely. He used to take the deer with him practically everywhere. Even when he found time in between to do his worship, and he was, sitting down and worshiping the Lord, in between doing worship, he used to suddenly think of the deer and said, "Oh, I hope the deer is okay. I hope he should be fine. And then he used to wake up. He used to get up from his worship. Even before he finished his worship, he used to get up and try and look. If he couldn't see the deer around him, he used to go and look for the deer and ensure that the deer is safe, that it's not been attacked by any wild animals. He was extremely, his whole mind, his whole focus was on the deer. So one day it so happened that just around sunset time, he could not see the deer around him. So suddenly his mind became very agitated. Where is the deer? And it's getting dark. Wild animals might come and attack. So it's my duty to check that the deer is fine. It's not endangered by something. So he was getting a bit stressed. It's mentioned that the stress was just like a miser who has got a lot of money and then suddenly loses it. How does he feel? So similarly, when he couldn't see the deer, Bharat Maharaj had the same thoughts in his mind, just like that miser. So he went searching in the forest for the deer, just crying around and searching for it. Couldn't find. He saw the footprints of the deer somewhere into the forest. And then he was thinking, my God, this place where there has been these auspicious signs of the deer, the Mother Earth must be so fortunate that these auspicious signs or steps, footprints of the deer has been ingrained on Mother Earth. Like we say, the auspicious footprints of Krishna, he is thinking the same about the footprints of this deer. Why? Attachment. Then he said that because this place is auspicious, why? Because of the footprints of the deer, it's also auspicious for the Brahmanas. So he was completely overwhelmed. And he had this, he had this uncontrollable desire and this attachment to the deer. Perhaps it could be results of his past sins or whatever it is, but actually the real reason is he started neglecting his spiritual life, and that showed. So he fell from his worship. Otherwise, can you imagine how can a king become so much attached to a deer when he has left so much opulence, all his family members, his beautiful wife, his sons, obedient sons, and he has come to the forest? Why? To practice devotional service. And then he gets attracted or attached to a deer. So you leave everything and come, and then get attached to not just a human being, but just an animal. So while searching for the deer, he still couldn't find the deer. He saw the footprints, but he couldn't find the deer. So while he was searching for the deer, death suddenly came. And he fell from a cliff. And as he fell on the ground, he lay on the ground, he saw that the deer was sitting just there, just next to him. And the scene was just like a son who's lamenting for his father who is just about to die. So Bharat Maharaj, when he saw the deer, his whole consciousness, his whole thoughts were completely absorbed in the deer. And as a consequence, when he died, what happened? Yam yam vapi sparan bhavam tyaja tante kalavaram tamtam evaiti kauteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. That whatever one thinks at the time of death, that state of being he shall attain. So because he was constantly meditating on the deer, thinking about him, he acquired the body of a deer once he gave up this body. But because he had performed devotional service throughout his life, and specifically towards after he gave up his material opulence, Krishna gave him a very good gift, and that is a gift of remembrance of his past devotional service. What happens after this? He gets the body of a deer. Where does that leave him? Does he go backward and then go back into the evolution of living entities or different bodies till he gets a human birth again? What happens? We'll see that next week, same day, same time. What happens when Bharat Maharaj gets the body of a deer. But before we leave, few lessons from today's session. First lesson, we all have a glorious lineage. And if we have a glorious lineage, we have to ensure, or we have to take responsibility to ensure that we represent the lineage properly. So it doesn't matter what our material lineage is. The real important aspect is we have somehow or the other become extremely fortunate to come under the lineage of this Guru Parampara, starting from Krishna and given to us specifically by Srila Prabhupada. So when we say we are followers of Prabhupada, we take it upon ourselves a big responsibility to represent him properly and to follow his instructions. So when we introduce ourselves, it is important to say that we come from the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. It is very important. That is our real identity, eternal. Second is that we have to understand that there is an appropriate time to there is also an appropriate time to retire from enjoying this material opulence only for the purpose of intensifying our devotional service. Otherwise, old age can be unbearable. So it's very important to take that decision. It might vary from person to person, depending on the status of that person and their responsibilities. But an appropriate time must be fixed to intensify our devotional service. We don't have to necessarily leave and go to the forest like Bharat Maharaj, but even if we are at home, we should try and follow the different varnas as recommended, or the ashrams that we need to go through. Third, spiritual life is actually very simple, provided we are completely surrendered. So we need to be simple and we need to be surrendered. And to be surrendered, we need to follow the regulative principles. So that's why nobody can just say that, oh, I'm a follower of Prabhupada or I'm following Bhakti Yoga, but I don't have any regulations. I just do it whatever I feel like. It doesn't work like that. So if we are following something, it is based on the instructions and the regulations given by the Parampara system. Very important. Fourth is the fact that we are progressing in our spiritual life will be indicated by the softness that we develop in our hearts. And that is evident externally by the compassion we develop. When we see people suffering around us, doesn't matter whether they're related to us, doesn't matter whether we like them or not. Whoever is suffering, we feel genuine compassion in our hearts. And that is the sign of advancement for a pure devotee. And the compassion is not for the material condition. It is for the spiritual upliftment. So we are compassionate not to give somebody a better material enjoyment, but to help somebody or uplift somebody spiritually so that they are able to achieve the ultimate destination. And that's why our own sadhana becomes very important. If we do not have our strict sadhana, then we can't even help ourselves, what to talk about helping others. So 4 points. One is we have to be proud of our glorious lineage. Second, we should know when to minimize material activities and intensify our devotional service. Third, keep our spiritual life simple and completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, specifically in the association of devotees. And the fourth one, the advancement in our spiritual life will be evident with the compassion we share for other living entities, and that will be directly proportional to our intensity of sadhana in our own devotional lives. Thank you very much. Hopefully, there'll be some interesting points that you can take away today and apply straight away. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.